Hey friend, welcome. I'm so excited to have you here listening to another episode of the Pattern Design Circle podcast. Here we talk all about the ins and outs of designing knit and crochet patterns and running a business that makes it all possible. I'm Jessica, your host, knitting pattern designer, design mentor, and the friend in your ear. Can't wait to dive right in. The Pattern Design Circle podcast is sponsored by the Pattern Design Circle, a membership community for knit and crochet pattern designers that are feeling lost, lonely, or frustrated in their business. It connects you with a supportive community that's always eager to answer your questions and help you through the hard times. And there's loads of resources and activities specifically catered to business and designing. Sound like your jam? Check it out at snickerdoodleknits.com/design-circle. That's snickerdoodle, like the cookie, knits, knits.com/design-circle. All right, let's get into it. Hello, and welcome back to the Pattern Design Circle podcast. I'm very excited to be sharing with you a replay from a discussion that I hosted on Instagram. It was actually on my Snickerdoodle Knits Instagram account. Last year in 2022, I hosted a different designer every single month, and I've been slowly sharing the replays here on the podcast because I've found that we as designers, we really do love to just connect with other designers, hear their stories, and gain from their knowledge, their journey, and their experience. And so in this podcast episode, I am sharing the replay from my discussion with Natalie Warner of Natalie in Stitches. This was from last October. So not quite a year ago, but it was wonderful to connect with Natalie to talk a bit about slowing down, being more intentional. And then also Natalie absolutely loves nerding out on like some of the technical aspects and stuff. And so I guess I started having her as a guest inside of Pattern Design Circle, the membership, about a year ago. And now I've had her for 3 different sort of technical conversations. I'll be hosting her again next month in July for another one. So I just really hope that you love listening into this conversation, that yes, it's a replay, but it's still so valuable. So I hope you really enjoy getting to know Natalie and connecting with her journey and taking some pieces of inspiration and maybe even guidance from her experience. So enjoy. Hello and welcome to the October featured designer chat guest speaker. So excited to be here. For those of you who are familiar with me and my work, I've been a little bit quieter on Instagram lately. I've been doing a lot more behind the scenes stuff. So it's really fun to be able to chat with you here, and I'm so excited to have Natalie with me today. If this is your first time joining a featured designer chat, I host these every month to feature another knitting pattern designer and to really dive deep into their work, their story, what they do as a designer, and how they got where they are. So we talk about their history a little bit. We talk about their life outside of knitting and designing. We talk about their design process, all of those things. So I'm really excited to have Natalie join me today. Looks like she's not quite on yet, but if you don't know who I am, hello, welcome. I am Jessica. I'm the knitting pattern designer and design coach, business coach, all of the things here at Snickerdoodle Knits and behind the Pattern Design Circle. And Natalie's here. Actually, Natalie was inside the Design Circle as a guest in July, I believe. She talked about designing raglan sleeves, and she'll be back in the Design Circle December, I think, to talk about fun with factorials. So, hello!
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes,
Nice to see you.
I can. It's so good to see you too. You'll have to remind me what time it is there again.
It's just after 5 o'clock, so I think 5 hours ahead of Eastern.
Okay, yes. So it's lunchtime here and it's dinner time there.
Yeah, something like that.
Wonderful. How are you today?
I'm all right, thank you. How are you?
I'm doing well, and I see that you're wearing the design that you sneak peeked for us inside the design circle. When I was looking for images to use for Instagram for this chat, I was looking for that to see if you'd published it yet.
No, not yet. I know. I'm chasing my tail a little bit with this one. It'll be out by the end of the month. I'm aiming for.
Oh,
It has just
so
been. I think I've just under. Well, timing is timing. Start of term and things like that. When you're a teacher, it just goes a bit mental.
yeah.
But no, this is the. It's going to be called the Korean sweater, and it's named after Karin Mark-Tanchak of the Periwinkle sheep.
Oh, yes.
And it's using her non-superwash worsted yarn, and it's really lovely, perfect for ribs like this.
So
So
cozy. I
yeah.
I want one in like three colors already. Uh,
Oh, well, she's got lots of gorgeous colours, honestly. I mean, I was so spoilt for choice working with her. She's an amazing dyer, and I was just could not wait. It's one of those things where you just love the yarn so much you don't want it to stop. And yeah.
yes, that's so lovely. Okay, so one of my favorite questions to ask to start off these featured designer chats is to ask you three words to describe yourself so that folks can understand who you are as a person.
Oh goodness.
And everybody has the same response, but I still ask it. So.
Yeah. Oh dear. This is the thing when you ask questions, you get to be like put us in the torture chamber with your interview. I think probably thoughtful. I think that's one word that comes up from other people. They always thoughtful comes up a lot, and I do think a lot. Occasionally too much, but I just like to I like to make sure all angles covered, and sometimes it occasionally bleeds into perfectionism. But I just like to make sure that I haven't cut corners, basically.
Yeah.
So that's one. Another one. Um, I would say, whatever. If there's one word to describe researchy, like bookwormish, conscientious, that kind of thing. I'm the kind of person that has loads of tabs open on the internet. Um,
I
because I
just
find
closed so many tabs yesterday because my spouse, he always is getting upset with me for how many tabs I have open. I love
no,
that.
that's no. Honestly, it's like it's only when things start to run a little bit slowly that I start to realize, oh, okay, I should probably start bookmarking these. But you know how it is. You start getting into this rabbit hole. You find something that's really interesting, and you think, okay, I want to find out more about that. And then you're just like, oh, okay, and you're following up. And then before you know it, you've just got so many things open. And I have gone back to things and thought, why on earth was I reading that? And
Yeah.
I can't imagine what that was connected to. Um, and so, yeah, so definitely rabbit hole bookworm kind of person. That's not one word, but I'm hyphenating it.
Yes,
Um,
we'll call it one word.
and I think the third one, gosh, I'm going to cop out and say creative.
That works. That's fair.
Yeah, because I mean, I thought especially the creating something out of nothing and problem solving aspect of creativity. I identify with that a lot, and yeah, I think that's definitely
Yes.
me.
I love that. Thank you so much for playing along. Oh, now I'll torture you a little bit more. I haven't tortured anybody else. But do you have three words that you would use to like describe like your business or your designs, what you try to create or do for people?
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I try to. I think evergreen is one definitely, because with knit, it's something that takes a long time. It's an investment of time, of money, and I think like the least that I can do as a designer is just to create something that is going to be a bit of a workhorse as far as the wardrobe is concerned, but also to that's versatile. Not the kind of person who follows trends a lot. If I were to do that, I would like nod to it maybe in the form of color rather than the styling, because there's some things that, and there's just some things I think will just work from year to year, from person to person, and what I hope to build up with my design catalogue is to just have a collectional portfolio of things that someone can identify with, or can pick something out for themselves that will work, because I think it kind of leads into another adjective I would use. I think well, independent or self-assured, I think, is the kind of thing I have in mind for the people I design patterns for, because it tends to be people who have a sense of their own style already. And I think in some ways that happens by default when you make your own clothes. Obviously, it can be as trend-led as you want it to be.
Yeah.
But I think that, most of the time when you're making your own clothes, you have a really good sense of what does and doesn't suit you. So I tend to just say, well, this is how I would wear it, but I'd also know that, other people, put their own stamp on it, and they often do. It's really, I love seeing finished objects of mine that people have made up, and they've just, they've lengthened it, and I encourage people to customize it to suit themselves as well, not just fit, but I also think, you could also do this. You could easily lengthen and shorten it, and yeah, and that's the best bit for me. Seeing other people put their own stamp on my work, because it's just a starting point, really.
Yes.
Um,
And if you're
and
anything like me, you have 100 different ideas of how you could customize it, but you don't have the time to knit all of those samples. So.
yeah, exactly. And sometimes it's really nice just, if you have something that is really well designed in that regard, it's lovely to then just come back to it or revisit it further down the line and think, oh, okay, I can reinterpret it in this way. And it brings it back to life. Because I think one of the things that I think I've been thinking about a lot lately is how easy it is when you design or create products, how easy it is to get trapped into the endless like launching of things and just novelty. And the thing that it's really handy to try and keep in mind is that just because it's new to you doesn't mean it won't be new to anyone else. Sometimes it takes people ages to see things. I mean, for example, my little garden account, I used to have my garden stuff in my stories on my main account here, and I moved it to another Instagram account earlier this year. And I'm pretty sure there are people who still don't know about it. I don't, and so you have to just keep, telling people what you have. I think, showing that it's still relevant, and not making people feel like, there's a lot of pressure to keep up. So I feel like that can affect knitters as well as designers. It can make what is essentially a really slow, mindful hobby into something that's a bit more like high street fashion or something like that.
Yes, so much.
Yeah.
It's I'm definitely in that like the same kind of space of like this isn't meant to be a competition of who can get the most stuff out there when we're not trying to make knitters and makers feel overwhelmed by all of the options. Like when everybody's just launching all these patterns, how do you like there's no way we can already knit all of the things we have in mind, let alone all of the new things. So then how can we as designers encourage this more sustainable and thoughtful, intentional making that actually helps both the designer and the knitter?
Exactly. And it gives you more of an opportunity, I think, to have a relationship with people who do knit your designs. I mean, I think that community side of it is really important, especially, with the pandemic and being locked down and people really wanting that sense of connection and community. And I think that, the people that you have on your mailing list or in your Instagram community, they're really important because, you know, they come looking for you. And I think on this account, it's way too big now. I think somehow, I mean, I've had been on Instagram since 2013, I think, and I think after a while I had to just stop following people because I wasn't seeing anybody, and then
Yes.
started following them from my other account instead, which is nothing to do with knitting, but it's just I could see what they're up to, the people that I've been speaking to for you know, years on here. And it's just giving people time. It's really important. And equally respecting the time available that people have available to make as well, because,
Yeah.
you know, that can spoil the fun otherwise.
Yeah, and if we're as designers creating nonstop patterns to launch, we're making nonstop, and that's our full-time thing. I mean, for some of us it is. And then how can you expect your audience to be able to make all of the things that you're creating that quickly?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, it is really difficult. I mean, I actually had someone, I think earlier this year on Twitter, she said that, you know, she was relatively new to knitting, I think, and she said that after a while she just felt so overwhelmed by the amount of stuff that was launching. She felt like she had to keep up. And then she actually just stopped for a few months and then, you know, just had to take a break from it because it wasn't what, you know, she thought it was going to be. And I just thought, oh gosh, well, I said, first, I'm really glad you came back. But it just goes to show that, you know, if one person says something, you often find out that other people feel the same way. And again, that's the whole community side of it, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, and I think where we are in our world in general, there's so much overwhelm already around us. And then when we're just adding to that overwhelm with a craft that is meant to relax you from the overwhelm, then it's just causing more disruption and chaos.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that is another thing that I like to build into my designs as well. I mean, just this sense of mindfulness. I mean, always try to work with textures and create shapes that, you know, people can easily get into a rhythm with. And I love when it works. Again, I'm looking at people's finished objects and saying, oh, this went along really quickly, or oh, this didn't take so long. All those kinds of things. I thought that's exactly what I want to do, especially with garments, because I do have accessory patterns, but I feel like because my background is more in clothes making and pattern cutting, I'm very much on safer ground with clothes. It comes along more slowly, but I kind of think, well, you know, the person who's going to be making stuff, it's happening in their spare time. There's a lot to think about in terms of fit than there is than with a hat or a scarf or gloves, for example. And so I feel like the least that I can do is let them, you know, take their mind off of some other things, like not make the patterns too complex, make sure that wrong side rows are like, you know, like old school patterns would say, work each stitch as it appears, or just a plain purl or knit row. I just try to put as many of those things into the pattern as possible so that you actually have more short-term memory available to concentrate on other things that can make it your own bespoke thing. And you know, I think when you design knitting patterns, you're kind of going into someone else's private world, really, when you think about it. When you think about the places that people knit as well. I mean, when I had a commute, a really long commute, it used to be an hour and a half one way. I used to spend a lot of time on the train knitting, and you're in your own little bubble, and you know, or in the corner of the sofa, or maybe in the knit group. You know, it's your own little personal space that I think you kind of by proxy get invited into when you design patterns. And I think being mindful of how others want to treat that space, just as it is when you send email newsletters and things like that, is really important. So yeah, I try to honor that as much as I can. I think it's a big job. I don't make life easy for myself at all. But yeah, you only answer 3 adjectives in the first question, so I can't give you any more.
Yeah. Yeah. So did you have more adjectives you wanted to use to describe your work, or did we pretty well cover it with the long
No,
hit?
I'm going to stop. You could get to a snowball effect.
Yeah. Okay, so I want to learn more about how, I mean, and I'm sure the audience because we love these stories. But how did you get into knitting and then designing and then teaching? What was that whole story?
Well, the story began with my family, really. So, my great grandmother used to be a machinist for Marks and Spencers, which is a UK. I don't know if they have that in the US or
Not sure.
Canada. It's basically it's more or less a department store, but it has a stronger focus on, say, clothing and food. And when they used to have UK manufacturing, my great grand was one of the outworkers. She used to take work in and sew while she was looking after her grandchildren, which would have been my mum would have been one of those children. And then one of my granduncles was a tailor, and so there's a lot of making going on through a lot of my maternal side, and on my paternal side as well, although they were around less often when I was growing up. So I grew up having clothes made for me pretty often. It was definitely a cheaper option back then. And on my local high street growing up, we used to have a department store. And the merchandisers were very thoughtful because they used to have the haberdashery right next to the toys. So my mum used to go and look in the remnants section for a bit of fabric to make a little dress for me. The yarn would be there, and now would just be in sight playing with Lego or something like that. So it was always it was always around, and so I was a lot of knowledge about making clothes from a really tender age, and it's kind of stayed in that domestic space for most of my life, really. It was not really until I turned, I was in my late teens, definitely, when I got into knitting proper, picking up more consistently. Sewing, I've kind of carried on a little bit. And so it wasn't until I think I was in my mid-20s that I thought, I would like to make this part of, how I make a living. At that point, I was working in higher education, which partly feeds into the teaching side of things. I was more a research assistant at that point and was getting really fed up of that because it was a more isolating kind of job. And I thought, I think I'd rather do something more sociable than teach. So everything kind of dovetailed in about 2010-ish, I think, because that's when I finished my conversion course at the London College of Fashion, and then I was to do fashion design, and then to get the job with Rowan Yarns, which involves some teaching. And I mentioned at my interview with them I wanted to teach, and then I think they gave me about a week's grace to say, right, you can do the hour teaching on the shop floor in John Lewis, which is another department store which has yarn and things. So I was like, oh, okay. I wasn't expecting it to be quite so soon. Um, but it's, it was being thrown in at the deep end for sure with the teaching, but in some ways, that's the nicest way to do it because you don't have any time to overthink or be afraid. And at that point, it was just like an hour teaching, basically. People could turn up at around 11 or half 11, and it would just be some sort of like learn to knit, a very basic snippet of a technique. And yeah, I would do that. And it got to the point where I was doing them most Saturdays. And I thought, I quite like this. And then it grew into teaching for local businesses. In London, and one of them became So Over It, which is now more international. And then it was more working in universities and colleges, and I haven't really left.
Okay.
So yeah, everything is just sort of from 2010 onwards for the teaching, and then the designing. That was nurtured once I started to work for Rowan as well. So then I was sort of like I could ask the designers questions like, "Oh, I've always wondered about this. How does this work?" And they were really helpful and supportive. They were happy to ask questions and going up to visit the mill for the annual meetings and things. It was a really good insight and exposure so that when the time came when I felt, okay, I'm going to try and see if anyone who has no obligations to me thinks that my stuff is actually nice. That watershed moment, I thought, okay, if it works, it works. If no one likes it, no one likes it, and I know what to do with my time. And yeah, then I think 2013 was when I started publishing designs, and it's been pretty consistent since then.
Yes.
So,
Yes,
yeah.
that's so fun. And then your designs, have they mostly been third party published? I can't remember.
They have been. I mean, I didn't really open my pattern shop until I think 18 months ago. Actually, 18 months ago this month. It was April 2021. But yeah, it was third party to begin with, and I felt that was a really good bit of advice. I would recommend that, I think, to a lot of people starting out, because it can be a really lonely thing trying to self-publish. There's a lot to think about, and then when you go for a magazine or journal or anything like that, any kind of periodical, you've got that in-house support from the editorial team, and that helped immensely.
Mm.
Um, and so also easy to fit alongside my teaching job as well. They all just it blended really well. It was manageable.
Yes, yes, I love that.
But
Do you
yeah, but I
have,
really admire anyone who just goes straight in. Sorry, oh, I
no,
think the thing my feed jumped. No, sorry, I thought you were asking a question.
no, go ahead. Yeah, there was definitely, I think there was a lag. There was a spinning
Oh,
circle. So.
okay. Yeah, so I'll just say it's a good safety net for anyone starting out. I think there's so much to think about when you are publishing designs, and it's a lot of pressure. And then you find out that so much of the work is about not designing than it is about designing, and it's nice to have a chance to assimilate that before you get too deep, I think.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I haven't done a lot of third-party publishing. I,
Mhm.
for the longest time, was convinced that I wouldn't enjoy it because I wouldn't have as much of a relationship with my customers. And, like, I was really interested in being involved from the beginning to the end with, collaborating with the yarn dyer and then taking my own photos and all of that kind of thing. But I just did my first third party pattern this year. I'm like, wait, I love this. Like, it's
Yeah.
it really is so much more supportive than I thought it would be. And obviously they cover a lot of the a lot of
Yeah.
different parts, and obviously every person has to weigh that. I don't know if I would have loved it as much 2 years ago as I do now because of where I'm at. And so, but can't change the past either way. But
Yeah,
um,
exactly.
I would
I mean, you
say,
make it work for you, don't you? Yeah.
yeah. You know, Sometimes there's designers who feel like they have to be really good before they work with a third party. But the truth is, like, the third party has all of these resources, and they already have the sizing charts and all of these things where you don't have to have it all figured out before you work with them.
Exactly. I mean, it's so much nicer, but I love that that's worked out for you now, and I kind of like everything in its own time. Because I think
Hmm.
in some ways it's partly about playing to your own personal strengths in the beginning, isn't it? And I know that even if I had had more time, I don't know if I could have taken on the responsibility of coordinating photo shoots and things like that, or just going it alone. Whereas for you to do that, I mean, that is immensely brave. I could not have done that. So hats off to you. It's just amazing. But I think the thing that I think sometimes people miss with design is that it's a team effort. And you've obviously it's going to have the designer's name or the idea generator's name on the pattern, if you want, for want of a less clumsy term. But there's a lot of people involved as well, and I think that when you work with third party, that kind of thing is really brought home to you, and especially when it begins as a hobby, isn't it? Because it's your own spare time, it's just you, and then before you know it, it's grown into something that actually does need to involve other people, and you forget to ask for help, or maybe want to try and find other resources. And I think it's a little bit easier in that I think there's more support for people. Like Tech Editor Hub is amazing. Tech Tip Talks is amazing. I love them so much. They just talk about how stuff works, and then your pattern design circle also. And that stuff wasn't around in 2010 at all. There was just nothing. We had Ravelry, um, crickets, yarn comp,
Well, and
and
even when
it
I
was it
started,
was. I remember thinking it was so hard.
sorry.
Yeah, because I just thought I think it was only like the other day I was thinking, what would I have done if I hadn't been working for Owen? It would have been really, really difficult if I hadn't worked for a yarn company and had that insight. Um, and so, having, spaces like this where you and I can talk, which would not have been possible again at that time either, about things, is really, really important. It's good for knitters, it's good for designers, it's good for everybody.
Yes,
So,
yes, that is such a good point to bring up. Wow, there's so many of us that are kind of frustrated with social media and really seeing the negative side
mhm.
of it, but it also has, connected us with so many people. It's brought us so
Yeah.
many of those resources and friendships, and that it's pretty amazing too.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I think you have to remember that social media is not the master. I kind of like to think about it as a kind of, marketplace or town square kind of thing, or a high street. It's kind of like, well, if you want to go out and just hang out and see what everyone's doing, it's much easier because you can just think, oh, look up this person. You can just talk to each other. It's much easier to do that. And then I think, once you see somebody that you quite like or want to get to know better, then you can go to their website, then you can join their mailing list, and then you can, connect with them um, on a more personal level because, when you have emails, you can see people's names, people can reply to you. I think, the mistake is when people feel like they have to be on social media all the time, or you get this business advice saying, "Oh, get all the accounts before your name's taken, and you have to be on everywhere." But really, you just have to go you have to find a space where fellow knitters are as well. It's a combination of what you enjoy doing and where your people are, I think. But
Yes,
but yeah, I mean, it's
absolutely.
done so much good. Instagram, YouTube, all that stuff. I love it.
Yes, yes. Something I shared with one of my one-on-one coaching clients was she was struggling a lot with Instagram, and my recommendation to her was take off the pressure. Treat it like your playground. Like that's where you go have fun, and you can be yourself, your silly self, your whatever, like don't don't feel like this is like coming into a work conference where you have to be tidy and quiet and fit into their mold kind of thing.
Yeah.
And that's really been helpful for her. And I feel like that aligns exactly with what you said. Like this this is it's a tool, but it's not our whole business.
Exactly, exactly. And that's it. And I think, us being on the same page just exemplifies the whole point about social media. It's just finding like-minded people and then just filtering things out. I mean, I forget that the filter controls are there sometimes. I mean, but you just do what you can with it, and most of all, that it works for you. Because if it doesn't work for you, then there's just absolutely no point.
No, yes, yes. Yes. Okay, do you want to share more about like I feel like you love the whole technical aspects of knitting and designing, and that's related to obviously your whole research side. Um, what do you love to nerd out about with knitting?
I think I like the engineering. I like all of it. I mean, I think the technical side fascinates me because I think next lifetime I want to be an engineer. I love the engineering aspects of it because you're building something, and engineering is so inherently creative. It just encapsulates so many things. And I just love the idea of building. I like building pattern, building shapes, and how they relate to bodies as well. I mean, I absolutely love fitting and teaching people how to fit when I teach dressmaking classes. It's one of my favorite things, just seeing, and that relationship between 2D fabric and 3D bodies is something that I never get tired of. It's one of the hardest things to learn, I think, when you design clothes, but it never gets old because there's so much uniqueness in people and how they dress, how they look, how they're shaped, and I think the technical aspects of it fascinate me because um, you just the possibilities are endless. It's really fascinating, and I like the conceptual artistic side of design as well. I mean, that's equally beautiful, but it just doesn't get me as excited because I think partly for the reason I just said, I just love the engineering, but also because um, I feel like you have I feel like clothes are just inherently practical, is what I'm trying to say. I mean, they can be beautiful, of course, and really inspiring and, wearable art, but I can never completely let go of the fact that they need to do a job. And I think in some ways that probably does limit me as a designer because I cannot get out of my head the practical function. What is this meant to do? It's a practical item. Um, and I don't necessarily go off and do wonderful, wonderful things that other designers would do necessarily in terms of, I don't know. I don't know. There are some things I would just never come up with, but the good thing is just that there's room for everybody. But it just means that um, what I do create is always going to have its feet on the ground. I'm just very, practical in a way, and I think at one point, I think I would have let that upset me. There was one point when I was studying where one of the teachers actually said, "I wasn't worried about you until I saw your sketchbook," and and it was just because I just thought, the whole. I mean, I can draw. Don't get me wrong. I love drawing. I love that. I love the doodling, the mark making, that side of it. But it was really hard for me at the time to convey exactly what I was passionate about in terms of design. And I think that in some ways, when you're self-taught, you can express yourself visually on your own terms. When you go to college or it's like I did, they're very much getting you ready for what the industry understands by creative. And I think it took me about a term to understand, oh, okay, this is how they understand X, Y, Z, so I need to do it like this. And it became a bit more of a political exercise than me necessarily growing. But in a way, it was good. So after that term, when I had that comment from one of the tutors, I just thought, okay, if this is what you lot want, I'll let you have it. So the second term, they gave us this really weird brief. It was called Dislocate, Relocate. And I thought, okay, I'll put something where it shouldn't be. So, and I apologize if this makes anybody squeamish. I got some jewelry because I was into jewelry making for a bit, and I just thought, I know, I'm gonna. And then we had some duck that was being cooked for Christmas dinner, and I just dressed up the duck in the jewelry, and that became my visual research. So, but I know it's absolutely, absolutely gross. I know it was just really macabre. I was just making it stand up and walk and things. I just thought, okay, fine. But it helped to get me an interview at John Lewis, designing children's wear of all things.
Oh, I love that story. That's hilarious.
So it is mad, but and again, I think it just shows, just people just be true to yourself. Just because you might not necessarily be around people who understand you in the beginning, but you'll always find your people. I mean, there's billions of us on the planet. You're going to find the ones who like you. It just might take some time.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. I love that so much. I'm finding it really fascinating. Like, we share very similar interests and such, but like came at it from such different perspectives. I was the engineering student who got bored with the monotony of doing the same thing over and over again in engineering and felt like it wasn't creative enough and ended up doing knitwear design because that's like the artsy. And so like I basically started off by, all right, how much fun can I have with this? I was never like out there in terms of really unique, whatever, but mostly just like playing with textures and kind of going overboard for me. Like, I'm very much a practical, I like to wear gray all of the time. Like, I'm a very big, but like my designs at first were like totally, it was like really trying to push that creative artsy stuff for me because it was lacking. And now I'm finally kind of pulling back to like, all right, this is actually me. This is like the practical side. I still love the math side, and like really finding that spot that I feel like it's kind of a similar spot to where you are, where it's the mathy technical stuff, but also the beauty and simplicity and practicality of it all too.
Yeah. No, but this is it. I mean, this is why we've got on so well whenever we've met online, because I mean, like I said, I really do love engineers. I just love the fact that you had that in your background when we first got in touch, and I just thought, oh my gosh, she did that degree. I would have loved to have done, and it's just wonderful. It's kind of like exactly as you were saying. It's like you're just looking to try and reconnect with a part of yourself that's been a bit buried, and then also then you're getting to articulate what that means for you as a creative person, and especially when you're working under someone else's direction. I mean, I don't know what it's like for engineering degrees. Do they always set you a project brief, or do you get to come up with your own thing? Oh, they say.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I was an architectural engineer with emphasis in mechanical systems. So mostly my degree was to design like heating and cooling systems and stuff like that. Like,
Okay.
how boring could that be? But the reason I had gone that direction was because it felt like the most potential for doing something new and different with sustainability stuff. But I really did love buildings, like the architecture side. But I was burnt out, and my mental health could not deal with going to grad school for architectural school. So that's where I was like, all right, I need that creativity, artsy stuff, but this is not the path for me right now. So what am I going to do instead? And I really didn't think of myself as a creative or artistic person. I didn't think I could. I mean, I'm not great at drawing, so and, I laugh that I can't even draw a stick figure. But I didn't think I could ever design patterns. I was like, I don't have the creativity. I don't know what I'm doing, but I need something creative. And I was kind of just wandering, and suddenly one day I started to have all these design ideas, and they've just been flowing nonstop ever since. So, some things you just have to wait for the moment, and then it starts.
Exactly. But I mean, the one thing I would say to you, don't feel bad about your drawing. I'm going to show you something that will make you feel instantly better. Okay. Can you see this?
Yes.
This is a plan for a design idea. It's not going to win the Turner Prize, but it gets you the idea. I mean, and to be honest, a lot of my designs, I very rarely spend time on like illustration, because as far as I'm concerned, that is a completely different skill set to design. Mm-hmm. And one of the things that I disliked about college, both as a student and then teaching on a fashion degree, was I felt like they overemphasized the drawing side of things. Mm-hmm. Because really what you need to do with visual communication is just let people into your mind and show you this is how it's going to work, and this is where you're going with it, so they can see, okay, we can see how that's going. Whereas if you want something that's artistic and is going to be used as part of maybe a sales brochure or presentation, then you recruit an illustrator to draw it for you, and they can use all their fine art experience to sell it. Because one thing that does happen sometimes when people study is that they're wonderful artists or illustrators. They're so strong with that. And then it all goes tits up when you actually ask them to make what they've drawn. And then the lines start to get a little bit blurred. Okay, well, you drew this, you sold it to us. Where is it? Can you make it? And then the pressure is on, because they realize it's something completely different. And sometimes that can be a bit of a shock to the system for undergraduate students when, you go to learn fashion design and it's more illustrative. And when you actually start working and have clients or, anyone else to cater for, then you come unstuck and you realize you're a bit lost. And I think, there are so many people who graduate from degrees like fashion with not enough technical knowledge who then go back to take evening classes to fill in the gaps that they didn't have whilst they were studying. So they still have that really strong creative handwriting identity, but in terms of actually bringing the drawing to life, that's where it becomes really difficult for some of them. Um, Definitely.
That makes a lot of sense. I mean, it's
Yeah.
so much of this 2D, 3D aspect. Even if you can make a drawing look 3D, it doesn't mean you've sorted out all of the details of the 3D.
Yeah, exactly. And because you're an engineer, you'll have thought about that already. If you were doing, say, woven garments, garments made on the sewing machine, you're automatically going to think, okay, how are they going to get in and out? And also, there's one funny story I learned from one of my pattern cutting teachers. There was one girl who just, I don't know if she actually got on with this student, but that's by the by. The point is that she was designing something and she warned the student, this is not going to work. No human can get that on. You need to create an opening somewhere that is big enough for the person to get it on through their head or step into it, something. I think it was a dress. And she was ignored. And then it all came unstuck on the day of the graduate fashion show when there was absolute chaos backstage because it had to just be made up on the fly. And then I think it was just, I don't think she actually said, I told you so, but in a way she didn't really need to. And I feel like, one often, I think drawing is really easy to improve drawing because, it's good to have just draw from life is the main thing. Make sure that you're looking at something 3D rather than a photograph. And it's much easier to just get a pencil and just draw what you see and teach yourself a lot. Whereas I think the technical side that I think a lot of knitters have, especially if they've been knitting for a long time and maybe want to try designing, they've got so much going for them already. And I think sometimes they're way too put off by, what a designer is meant to be or the skills that they're meant to have. And they shouldn't be, not for that.
Yeah.
For that.
Yeah. That. Yeah, because really what's important is that you can create the thing that you're trying to create. Especially for us. Like, we're not, if you're submitting to like a third party, you have to convince them that you know what you're doing and that they're going to like the idea. But really, it doesn't have to look super fancy and perfect and polished. Like, our job is to just make sure we can create the thing and make it reproducible so somebody else can create the thing.
Yeah, exactly. And then this is where, your knitting skills can do the talking. Because, I mean, if you're not confident about drawing, you're thinking about submitting to a third-party publication, just show them the swatch.
Yep.
Show them more than one swatch.
Yeah. And do a mini sample of the idea.
Mm-hmm.
And
exactly.
like
yeah, because that counts as visual communication. It doesn't just have to be drawing. It's just something that you see that conveys the idea in the way that you want it to be conveyed. That's all it is. The mark making, inky, gouache type drawings, just put it to one side. You don't need it.
Yes. This whole conversation reminds me of, I went to an art museum, just a local art museum last month, and there was this artist who I wish I could have met him and just had a discussion with him, because it's obvious his brain just fascinating to me. But he would write letters to the museum director with his next idea, and the letters are his painting of what his whole idea is. He made sculptures with motors and extremely 3D and massive projects, but here he's creating this painting, and the painting looks beautiful. He's got all of his words that are his letter throughout. I have no idea how the guy read his letters. And then the painting looks beautiful, but the sculpture is something completely different, and they're both beautiful. The guy was a genius, but they did not look the same. But at the same time, like, nobody cares, right? Like,
Yeah.
so, you know. Anyway,
Yeah.
um, we only have 15 minutes left. So,
Really? Oh my God, sorry.
I have a tendency to do this. I go off on a million tangents. So,
No, I'm having a great time. Thank you. Not sorry at all.
thank you. Um, just like your personal life outside of knitting and designing, do you have other hobbies and interests? What does your day to day look like?
Gosh, I think I'll have to preface everything I'm about to say with when I have time.
Yes.
Um, so I like music very much. I mean, piano and guitar are my ones that I have in my room now. I was really lucky with my primary school that it had a music room, and so I got to learn four instruments. I learned the drums to an extent, and then the recorder, and then just love the piano and guitar most. And then any chance I get, I just try and practice or write some music. And then also gardening as well. Just for the pure escapism of both, really. And then also photography is something that I'm trying to learn, although um, it's coming along slowly. Photography. I'm too scared of putting the camera on manual mode. I have a very old camera that nobody would ever part exchange for anything. It's that old. But it's got the safety net of the scene selection, so I don't have to worry about adjusting any of the apertures and all that kind of stuff. But it's a really nice outlet because if I don't have time to draw, I can take a picture or something and think about other things that are connected, just the compositions, try and have that as a creative outlet. But yeah, I can't think of anything else. I think that's it. I mean, what about your spare time as well?
What spare time? No, I'm doing better, especially since this summer I kind of went through some burnout and just really trying to kindle that whole artsy creative side again outside of knitting and designing. But I basically love anything I get my hands on. I enjoy playing with photography as well. I have a violin and a cello.
Oh,
Um,
lovely.
I played violin in school, and well, that's a whole nother story. I'm the oldest child, and I like had to beg and beg my parents to let me play violin, or I wanted to
Oh.
play cello, and then finally got them convinced to let me do violin. My brother is a year younger, and he plays cello. So anyway, after I was away from home, I got a cello as well, but I've never had lessons on it, so I just tinker around. But then I also love painting and sewing and all of the things, stamping and scrapbooking, and yeah. And so I'm not like amazing at any of them because I just dabble and just have fun. And painting's kind of been the one, writing a little bit of poetry more recently, but yeah.
Yeah. Oh gosh. Were your parents thinking about creating a string quartet amongst you? Is that why they didn't want you to learn the cello and gave it to your brother instead?
No, they weren't familiar with strings at all, and so they were like, I think it was kind of just their own fears around it and stuff. And anyway, violin seemed like the most practical instrument, and so and then. But yeah, both of my brothers play cello and my sister plays violin. So we did end up with basically a quartet. Did I say my sister plays violin? She plays viola. Anyway, so
Okay.
we have a viola, a violin, and two cellos. But
So one of the brothers needs to move on to the double bass. I'm sorry. One of
yeah,
them they need to do rock, paper, scissors.
I agree. Yes. Oh, yeah. I said my youngest brother needed to to play bass, but I also don't blame him for not wanting to, lug out back and forth all the time. So,
Yeah, I
um,
see your
yes. Um, so I think we could keep talking about hobbies forever, but I want to give you a little bit of time to show some of your designs or talk about some of your designs that you have.
Well, apart from this one, I'll just come out a little bit so you can see. It's got raglan sleeves. Here's the star line detail here. I don't know if the other side is easier to see or not, but anyway, yeah, but it's symmetrical. Um, and it's got this collar, which is I've been wanting to do knitted collars for ages. I've got ideas for about two more, and I thought just get one out. But you could knit this with a normal crew neck as well, just have a ribbed finish if you wanted to. And then the rib is just in single rib for the neck, same as it is for the collar. What else have I got? I really haven't thought this through in terms of layout. I'm really sorry. This could be quite awkward.
Oh,
But yeah, I've got the Anita cardigan. Let me try and get that on here. And that's a wrap cardigan, just
yeah.
there. Yeah, and that was one of my first patterns. I released that when I opened my pattern shop last year. It's got these darts at the ribbing at the waist, but you've also got the potential along here on the princess line, because I think that's just what it's called, to do increases here. If you need more bust shaping, if you have a fuller bust, you can, increase, and then anything will just be decrease into gathers around here at the yoke. And that was one thing that I wanted to try to do, to experiment with bringing tailoring stuff into knitting. So that's one. And then I think probably a bit more normal, for want of a better term, is the Unite sweater. And I really like this one. Hang on. Yeah. Because it was something, I really love this. This was part of the collection that I did with Arnold Culliford Knitwear, and I love the teamwork element of that, because it gave me so much freedom to just work on creating a textured collection. And I think it was the first time in a long time that I had been able to work without any particular stress or having to do all the jobs at once. It was just having that taken care of. So yeah, and I think otherwise, what else can I show you? This Now, I did tidy up the desk earlier this week because I knew this was going to happen. But here is just my little swatch cubby hole, just where I have all the swatches here that I'm working on. You can get some sneak peeks of stuff that's just randomly all over the place. And I love the peace of mind that gives, in that, I'm in a really awkward space. That's why I'm keeping everything very tightly angled. But the peace of mind of just being able to just shut stuff away when you're creative and you tend to work messily and you might not necessarily have time to tidy up. It's just, shut the bureau lid. It's done. It's tidy. No one can see anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, and so everything that I'm working on goes in this space, and it's all in sort of very early incumbent stages at the moment. I think after this sweater goes out, it'll probably be a while before I do anything else. But it depends. I think one thing that I am learning, sort of going back to what we were talking about earlier, is just to not feel like I have to be on any kind of seasonal schedule. I think I wrote that in my newsletter last week, just sort of changing how I was going to do things. And I think the day I sent it, I had a really good night's sleep. And I think that, like you taking a break from things over the summer, going back to what you wanted to do, I think, honoring that is so important. And whether it's, just giving yourself space to just be human, whether that's slamming the door on a messy bureau or painting, you have to do it. And the thing is that when you've got really good people around you supporting your designs and what you're doing, it makes it so much easier to, take a break. No one's really expecting you to be perfect. I'm saying that partly to convince myself as well as know that it's true. But the pressure of being on all the time goes away when you know that you've got people rooting for you and they're just happy to support you.
Yeah. I mean, there are a few people who, I don't know how to say this in a nice way, but there are some people who expect people to be perfect, and suppose some of that is because that they're also putting that pressure on themselves and they're not allowing themselves to be human. But I do believe that the people who we truly want around us and who actually support us completely support us as humans.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's part of what you're looking for. I think one of the most nourishing spaces that I think I have is my newsletter community. I mean, and you must have that with the Pattern Design Circle and with your newsletter as well, because you've got people who've actually like chosen to get closer to you. They've invited you. Yep, I'm happy for you to show up in your inbox, and I think that I'm just still slowly starting to wrap my head around exactly how forgiving and human that is.
Yeah.
And it's so precious, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's yeah.
And that's why, for any other business owners out there, like that's why it's so important to attract the people that you want to work with, because otherwise you're not going to have that comfortability to be to do what you want to do and explore, to find what you want to do and navigate all of the things of life as a human.
Yeah, exactly. Because you need space to be messy and to evolve and to grow, and that's part of it. You can't just be doing the same thing all the time. You've got to give yourself grace and space to grow. And yeah, I completely agree.
Yes. Knit and Mary said, great advice. Have a great day. Thanks so much for everybody who's been here live. I hope you really enjoyed it, and I hope you have a beautiful day, Mary, and everybody watching, and you too, now.
It's been a lot of fun. Thank you, Jessica.
So where can folks find you on the internet?
So my website is natalieinstitches.com, and on there you can find the link to sign up to my newsletter. I also have a blog on there as well that I publish onto fortnightly, and my pattern shop and things like that. But yeah, my newsletter is probably my favorite space. So yeah, you can sign up to that if you'd like to.
Yes, I love that. And if folks are interested in taking classes from you.
Yeah. So I have a sleeves class coming up at Vogue next month. But I'm also piloting a knitwear design course to begin next month. I've been doing it very quietly because it means a lot. I don't want to do it with any like massive fanfare. But we're going to start with, as it happens, a sort of visual communication module for about 6 weeks, starting in early November. So yeah, join up on the mailing list or just write to me on the contact form if you want to hear more. And I think I'll probably take no more than about 15 people so I can keep it manageable. And yeah, see what it develops into. I'm hoping it can grow into a really valuable resource for people in years to come.
Yes, wonderful. And for anybody who is inside the design circle, we'll be chatting with Natalie again in December about fun with Factorial. So that'll be a lot of fun. I know folks loved our chat on Raglans and the whole technicality aspect of that, because there are a lot of our guest speakers don't dive in deep onto the technical aspects, and it was much appreciated. So
thank you. I'll make sure that I am primed and ready.
No pressure. Like, go up as you are. You will be well loved and received. So don't worry. Thank you everybody for listening in. Thank you for all of your time today. This was so wonderful. I love these chats so much, and it's been such a pleasure to just hang out.
Oh, like
the hour just flew by. So
yeah.
Do you have anything? Oh, I guess you already said you don't really have much for designs coming up. So what?
Just this one. Yeah, later this month, and the rest are ready when they're ready. I think if you want to I think what I'm going to do in the newsletter is just show things that I'm working on in progress. So if you wanted to get any sneak peeks of what's coming up, the mailing list is the best place to be. I'm not going to put anything out in the public until it's ready to be published. So it's just to see I am working, I am doing something, just not in publishing mode. But yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you so much and have a beautiful evening.
Yeah, you too, Jessica. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'll talk to you later. Wow, thanks so much for listening to this episode. If you found it valuable, please share the podcast with a designer friend. And if you have a minute, leave a review. It's so helpful for me and means the world to me. Chat soon.